We're going to have a go at a box opening from Jack at Tuff Pens. Now, we met Jack at SHOT Show and had some previous communication from him prior to that over the last several years, and Jack had participated in a SHOT Show interview with us. We've purchased a number of his pens. His Tuff Rider pen collection is above and beyond the typical. I thought we had 3, but it looks like there are 4 containers here from Tuff Rider. In any event, we've had communication with Jack over the years, the last several years, from time to time, and a follow-up to this progress of this specific type of pen. It's his standard click type pen. He does this in titanium, he does the pen in copper and stainless steel, probably some other materials. This is going to be a bit of an unveiling of something that he debuted at SHOT Show, I believe 2018. We had a sampling of it. He had a sample version of his pen, and he refers to this as the Terrarium grown copper pen, if I'm using the correct nomenclature for Jack. Also pronounced Peter, as you may know. Some people are aware of that, some people are not. I digress. Interesting. It feels like there's almost a spring load on these tubes. Nope, no spring load, but maybe suction. The Terrarium grown pen is, yep, that's what we've got here. A very nice, interesting finish that Jack came up with. Again, sometime prior to SHOT Show 2018, and we have been in discussions with him about acquisition of one of these pens. In this case, we've got 4 Terrarium grown pens. Jack uses a proprietary method to come up with this finish. Now, we have 2 different tones here with these. We're going to go ahead and open these from the Ziploc container and discuss them briefly. Well, maybe not briefly, but we'll try to make it brief. The reason why there is a different tone to each of these pens, the 4 pens were made simultaneously in the same terrarium. Now, the difference between the 2 versions that you see here, this kind of goes really nice with the map, is there is a darker version, obviously, and a lighter version of the pens. One of them, was had an extra Cerakote finish added to it. That is 2 of the pair. So all 4 of these pens were grown at the same time during the same period of time, which I believe was at least several weeks. We'll get that directly from Jack here in the future. But in the case of either the darker or the lighter, they were Cerakoted. So the Cerakote will help maintain the same color, if you will, the same tone, and the other pen, the opposite, will have a patina. That's already there. I guess they're already patinaed, but an additional patina will develop with use, and depending upon environment and climate of where we happen to go with these. And we're going to run these through some testing just to get a comparison. So again, Jack, thank you very much. I'll be calling you up and we'll get a little more specific information about your process. This, I believe, the terraforming almost of these copper pens. And look forward to using them. Weight on these is nice and hefty, again, because I believe they are copper. And again, look forward to running these through the mill, so to speak. This Gear Challenge gear introduction and beginning of a test in progress is brought to you by, brought to us by well, not really brought to us by, but in a way brought to us by the Balvenie Caribbean Cask 14-year aged Scotch. We will be delving into that during this discussion that will occur in just a moment. That is, if Mr. Jack Romanov, Tuff Rider, actually answers the phone. So let's try to make the call. Hello, Jack.
Hey, what's happening?
Not too much. This is Stuart Gatz. How you doing, brother?
Doing all right, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, especially now that a box has arrived on this end.
There you go. The box you good?
So far, so good. I've done an initial box opening, and just by way of introduction for anyone who may not be familiar with you and your incredible gear, this is the Tuff Rider pen series from Jack Romanov, Tuff Rider. Tuff Rider made in the USA, of course.
Yeah, sunny Phoenix, Arizona, to be precise.
Sunny Phoenix, Arizona, absolutely. Now, if you would, just speak directly into your microphone so we can pick you up on audio, Jack. This is going to be an open mic interview, so to speak. And in preparation for that, I'm going to go ahead and pour myself a stiff one here, a little bit of Balvenie Caribbean Cask.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah. If you're so inclined, of course, you may have already started, but if so, salute, huh, brother?
There you go. Yeah, love it.
Love the, yeah, okay. Well, listen, I've opened this box of 4 pens that we've discussed since, if memory serves, since SHOT Show of 2018. Does that sound correct to you?
Yeah, I think you've been in process for a while now.
Well, but that's one of the things that I appreciate about you is that you don't really put the product out as available until you've got all of the bugs worked out or until you've got your process ready to go. You're one of the few, I won't say manufacturers, you're one of the few makers, since you have a small shop, you're one of the few makers that does that. Instead of promising a lot of fiscal air, if you will, you wait until things are ready to go.
Yeah, and that sort of kind of works. Like, we tend to do some cool stuff and then kind of try to get it debugged. We have a process in terms of how we get stuff debugged and how we try it, and then, we experiment and we geek on it for a while. And it's kind of funny because people online tend to do the whole, man, I thought these were going to come out. And I usually tell them, like, man, when it's good and res, you'll get it. But, we try not to half-ass it too much. That's the way I say it.
And I think it's fair to say that that's so far so been you can use that if you like. It's so far so been, yeah, a little too much of the Balvenie maybe. No, I just got started, brother. But so far, that has been the case with you, as the pens and a couple of little widgets that I have acquired directly from you perform admirably. And just a little bit of background on your pens before we get into opening these up, because I've still got these in the tube, and there was a reason that you mentioned when I was able to order these that I kept them in the plastic and the tube after I initially checked them. But one of the things about you, if you would, tell me about your production management of materials. If I recall correctly, you actually hands-on make almost every component of your pens. Am I correct?
Yeah, we're kind of a little bit unique in that we're not a traditional, manufacturer. Is the way I said it. We're what you said, makers. We're cross in between. We're more like a semi-custom shop with limited production. In that everything is prototype and mostly made in house, or anything that we can get done outside, we'll get them locally, like anodizing, things like that. But short version, we do all the design, all the machining, like quite a bit of finishing. The stamping for the clips is done by a local guy, Greg out here. Powder coating is done. My 2 guys that we know over here. So we
Well, especially if you're working with titanium or some of the other harder materials, correct?
Yeah, titanium, zirconium, C145 Terrarium copper, C360 nickel brass, some 6061 aluminum. Those are the materials we use mostly. We do stainless steel. Every once in a while we'll do something a little goofy or a little bit more exotic, but that's usually just for custom stuff. The zirconium is actually something we started just this past year, and it's out there to work with, but we're able to do some really cool things with it.
Well, I'm going to look. I will personally look forward to that. And well, I didn't want to say anything about the zirconium, but you did mention that when we had a discussion pre SHOT Show 2019, when I had touched base with you to see if you'd be making it out and what you might have in the lineup for available at your table. And of course, that's when these guys came up, when these 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 specially treated copper pins came up. If you will, I'll just give, based upon recollection, what you told me, just a snapshot of what this is as I open up one of these. Now, these start off as copper pins, copper bodies, if you will, and you subject the copper to I was calling it in my opening shoot that I did when I unboxed these, kind of like a terraforming process. And I think you place these into a terrarium, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick snapshot of how this rolled up. So essentially, getting the patina or whatnot on the copper turned out to be a little bit more complicated than Arizona. So one, we prep the material, we clean it, and then we prep it before we can apply. It's essentially an acid that speeds up the patina and aging process. And what we're doing is we're growing it. And we couldn't get it to work for the life of us at first. And then we talked to a couple people, who are experts in the patinas, and when they described the way they do the process, it became obvious was that the air in Arizona is too dry. There's not enough humidity here most of the year to actually be able to make this work. So we have to create a terrarium that we keep at 60 degrees with 80% humidity. And we literally, have holders, and we grow over the course of 5 days this patina on these copper bodies.
Now, you mentioned that the climate of, we'll call it arid zona, is not conducive to growing the patina, and that's, I think, where I got that terrarium or the terraforming concept from. And I think you mentioned that you actually place them in something of a terrarium in order to, which is a closed environmental system and allows you to achieve a humidity level that will allow you to create what is now open and in front of myself and the camera.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we do. And it took a couple of tries to get this process dialed in. It didn't help that it takes days to develop this, right? So we tried different materials or the different concentrations of different chemicals to be able to do this, and then it turned out that different temperatures and then different humidities would make things a little bit different. We finally kind of got it dialed in where we're pretty happy with it, and we're able to do it fairly consistently, but it still does take roughly a week to make one.
Nothing about little elves in that terrarium that are, taking a piss on it or anything like that?
Well, you know what I mean? We've got employment laws and NDAs with the elves, so I'm afraid we can't go.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, nothing like treated with elf piss, right? So
That's right, yeah.
now, in the case, we're talking about approximately a week in the terrarium for the terraforming process, and I know technically it's probably the wrong language, but I'm butchering it just about as much as most rap stars would, and in the case of two of these pins, because we've got two off colors, and you had asked me when we discussed this project getting it actually done so that I could sample them and find out what they're like. You had asked me about if I wanted them, Cerakoted or not Cerakoted. Now, I could not recall for the life of me what the sample version that you had at SHOT Show 2018, how it had been treated. But when you mentioned the option, I asked you what's the difference. In other words, what's the advantage or disadvantage? And you said there really isn't an advantage or disadvantage. It's just the end user's choice. I asked you if it'd be possible to do one of each. And of course, the intent is once these have been tested out, obviously they're going to go to a couple of folks that I know. And your reaction to that was, well, wait a minute, I think you said that you preferred to do them all one way or the other. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So the thing with the Cerakoting is that process has not been dialed in, and in fact, the ones we did right now, we were having some issues with different Cerakotes, so essentially there's different versions of the clear coat that you can do. And the ones that you have were the first ones where we did the new version, which is, I think, semi-gloss, and then spray on bake on it, and we baked it slower and over time to be able to get it. The guys who did this, Area 15 are the guys that do our Cerakote out here, and they're phenomenal. They do some really cool stuff on guns, but this is a little bit new for them, so they were willing to work with us to do a little bit of experimenting and try some stuff out. The advantage of the Cerakoted version is that patina is now not just sticking in there, but then coated, so those pens should, in theory, look like that forever until pretty much the end of time, whereas the non-Cerakoted version will continue to patina and change.
So now, which is which? We have a lighter version, which I'm holding up now, and then a darker green version. Almost looks more like a dark camo. So which is which?
Yeah, the darker ones are the Cerakoted ones.
Okay. So then the lighter green, almost like a turquoise color, those will continue with their patina.
They will continue to patina, and depending on the ambient atmosphere, they'll still be changing colors a little bit differently. So they would look different in a year here versus wherever you are, versus if we send it to Alaska or something.
Right, or a tropical climate, or yet an even drier climate than Arizona. God forbid there's such a place.
Yeah.
Now,
Exactly.
the bodies on these are solid copper, correct?
C-145 Terrarium copper for the body and the tip, correct.
Okay, and so what I've done is, hopefully I haven't voided any warranty, yuck, but I've unscrewed the tip from two of these, one Cerakoted and one non-Cerakoted, and looking at the interior threads of each tip, the non-Cerakoted seems to be a little brighter in copper color than the Cerakoted version. And is that part of that Cerakote treatment, or is that just possibly just one-offmanship from the handling of them?
No, it's because of the heat during the bake session, actually.
Okay, so the Cerakote, yeah, that's right, because Cerakoting, you get that baking, which is a pretty intense, oven, let's say.
And I think we only ran it at 275 for 4 hours. We ran it at a lower temperature for a longer duration in order to not mess up that patina.
Okay. Now, you're continuing to use your refills are the Fisher Space Pen refills.
Yeah, big fan. They work hot, cold, wet, dry, upside down, right side up, wet, dirty, whatever. So we're kind of big fans. That said, any Parker-style refills will fit into those pens as well.
Okay. So any refill will fit, and and I just had the black insert slide out of one of them. I'm going to disassemble this other one to seeing which way it's supposed to go in, if it's supposed to be the nipple type end going in first or vice versa.
It'll work either way, actually.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, it looks like these went in nipple out. So, Okay, very good. So a regular Fisher refill will work on these just as easily as the space pen refill. And of course, the space pen refill has that advantage of if you are in a negative buoyancy gravity, you can just go ahead and keep riding upside down.
Yeah, and for me, the biggest advantage of them is it doesn't matter whether it's dirty, or slick paper or whatever, they work. So they tend to work on almost anything. That's, I think, the biggest advantage of them. The fact that it's an American company that makes these in Boulder City, Colorado. I mean, not Colorado, Boulder City, Nevada. But that doesn't hurt either.
Well, and I've noticed, as an example, you were spot on. I like using the Ride in the Rain pads, notebooks, and your pens do not have a slippery, slidey, inky thing going on. I mean, the ink gets applied and it's on.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So now, weight on these is very similar to the other copper pens that you manufacture, that you make, rather. And in handling these a bit, the plan is, and of course, you had mentioned when I called, and we talked about getting some of these done, we kind of delved off of that whole Cerakote story. So you had asked me if I wanted to go Cerakote or non-Cerakote, and I really appreciate the backstory on this. Is still a bit of a development in progress with the Cerakoting concept.
Yeah.
Now, what was your biggest concern? You had a concern about having them either Cerakoted or not. And at one point during that conversation, you mentioned something about you'd prefer to just go one way or the other, especially if any of these were to be ended up being distributed to anyone else. And so what was your concern about that?
Well, because I like my OCE specification, right? Like, I like things to be fairly consistent in the fact that if we're going to go the Cerakote route, which, especially after doing the Cerakote and having Area 15, do a couple different tries, I'm pretty convinced that's the way to go now. But what happens is we've gotten customers that really like the pens to continue to patina that feature, I guess I would say, of copper, or that aspect of copper. So, I kind of, since we haven't really released these, so they're kind of still prototypes. So you got something special there. I like the idea of them being consistent. So whichever way we pick with it, we'll kind of stick with it, going forward. But it was a good opportunity to actually play with it and then compare the two. But the way the Cerakote came out, I'm actually very, very happy with it, and I can't wait to see how it holds up over time now. Okay,
very good. And my plan is, I'm literally, and of course it probably won't matter with the Cerakote, although to perform an adequate and fair test in progress, or as we like to call it, a tip, I plan to put one of each in a desk drawer, just an office environment in a relatively I'm trying to say stable climate, but in a non-arid and a non-tropical climate, just a regular. What would that be? Help me out here, Jack.
I guess just a normal environment, right?
Yeah, just a normal North American environment of what, like a regular urban type of an environment. Not a desert environment per se, not a tropical climate, but just a, whatever that's called, whatever the climatologists call, just, mid-European, mid-United States type climate. And that'll be in a desk drawer. Relatively untouched. I don't plan on handling either one of them very much. The other two, the Cerakote and non-Cerakote, I plan to take with me jointly in a variety of different environments, and to see how they fare. Now the support. Yeah, and quite frankly, I can be kind of hard on equipment, so they may be dropped from time to time. I mean, who knows? And frankly, I may even end up losing one, but I'm willing to take that chance. And then after, I don't know, maybe at least, let's say 3 to 4 months, maybe close to a quarter of the year, then do a side-by-side comparison very similar to what we're doing now. And quite frankly, the non-Cerakoted and the Cerakoted pens virtually look identical to each other. The Cerakoted pens being the darker, if I remember correctly, yes? Okay, so it'll be interesting to see at what point the non-cerakoted pins become equally dark or equally treated or equally formed, transferred or through the whole dynamic, and then at what point, if they begin to surpass the darkness and the shading of the cerakoted versions. That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, actually, that'd be fantastic. I'm really curious to see that myself.
Okay, very good. Now you have very kindly provided me with a couple of images, a couple of still images of the pins, the bodies. That
yeah, I'm
is.
sorry about the big fix that got in there. That was an accident. So yeah, I apologize.
Hey, well, as long as we're not comparing that, we're okay. Don't mind comparing the pins, brother, but let's not get into that arena. I appreciate that because that also gives me, and once we release this video, it'll give us an idea of kind of like what your general process is. Unless, and I have to ask, is there anything proprietary about that you don't want me to post publicly?
No. So as a whole, I tend to run open source, like because this is just my mentality with everything, right? Like if people want to know how we make stuff, I will show them, right? If anybody wants to see, there's really no secrets. Like our secret is we just make things as well as we know how to make them. And if anybody wants to know what that looks like, they can come and see how the sausage is made. So I got no problem with it.
So you're even open potentially, and I'm not going to commit you to anything here, but you're potentially open to a visit. Not just, and we've talked about me visiting your shop, but you're even open to someone who's curious about being a maker themselves. You're open to them visiting you as well, possibly.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually help. So one of the things I do is I help other people, like in the industry. Sometimes when they've got stuff, and I've got guys that I've collaborated with, and I tell them, dude, swing by the shop for 3 days and we'll work on something. So absolutely.
Yeah, but Jack, I think that's exactly what you told the elves that you've got in that terrarium too.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's what I needed to lock them in there.
That's what you get. That's how you get your helpers and your diabolical helpers in the shop. Very good. Well, listen, just a very quick question, and I don't have one handy, but is there any plan? Well, there's a possibility of having these made. This is the full-size pin, so my question is, it's possible to have these made in the mini version.
Yeah, it can be done, right? Like, the process can be done. What I would like to do is we have a new pen that we kickstarted, the retro click pens, and those came out really nicely, and it serves for a good platform. Just the size and the way that those are machined, it makes for a very good platform for adding features to it. I actually think that would almost be a better pen, which is also a little bit smaller than those PPPs, to go if we were going to try that in a smaller version.
Okay, and you've got that in a Kickstarter format right now?
We delivered the Kickstarter. We just closed it up and delivered the last pen about a couple weeks ago, and we're going to start making them in the next month or two and releasing them through the website and through our dealers. But we're a small shop, so we're just hustling it over here.
Right. Yeah, I know you're buried with orders and just trying to keep up, and you're doing quite well at that in your let's call it your marathon format.
We're doing all right. Part of the thing is that since we're making everything here, every time we add a new, whether it's a new finish, new patina, or a new model, we have to kind of get it dialed in here, but still keep making consistent stuff. So.
Right. And what is the model name on that pen that you just closed the Kickstarter on?
The Retro Click.
Retro Click. Okay, very good. And those can be you can be contacted through your website, correct?
Yeah, so what's happened is we ended up getting a lot of people who missed the Kickstarter and then emailed me, and so we added them to the tail end of the Kickstarter, and we're still, so the Kickstarter is done and delivered, but we've now got people who are ordering them, even though we haven't released them. So it's kind of, I've got to make enough of them to be able to release them, but I'm kind of fulfilling all the people who wanted them that missed on the Kickstarter. So.
Well, yeah, obviously, and you've always been quite the honorable man with regards to that, and so I know that you want to fulfill your Kickstarter obligations first, the people that have already ordered. And
yeah, absolutely, got to do it.
for the purposes of someone who is not already familiar with you and doesn't have your website, on their libraries page or what have you, it would be www.tuffwriter.com, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's us.
Send an expedited email to Peter, who is your main man.
Yeah, just jack@tuffwriter.com, or even we have a link at info@tuffwriter.com if anybody needs anything. And I usually try to get back to you.
Very good. Okay, brother. Well, listen, I'm going to look forward to seeing you at SHOT Show 2020. If not, one of the other events that will be coming up in the interim. And any other comments that you have about these pens? And again, I'm just kind of holding them up at the camera to get an idea of what the dimensions appear to be. And,
No, I want to know what they hold up like, especially with that new patina and the Cerakote. So, yeah, use them and abuse them. That's what they're for. I mean, we make this stuff to be used.
Beautiful. Well, listen, brother, I really appreciate your time this late afternoon, early evening. I hope that you had a little vodka or scotch yourself, and salute.
Sounds good on you. Take it easy.
Take care, brother.